Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. My name's Phil Spencer and I'm the General Manager at Scanmar QED. I'll be the moderator for today. I'm joined by my colleague Milan Knapp, who is the Executive Director at Roivenue, which is Scanmar QED's digital attribution solution, and by Wojtek Orovec, founder at Ranketta, who helps companies become visible in AI search. So we're here today to talk about something that's moving very fast and affecting all of us, and that is AI search. So the way that people find products and brands is changing, and a growing share of your potential customers aren't typing queries into Google anymore. They're asking ChatGPT or Claude or their other tool of choice and acting on whatever those models recommend. So this means there are two distinct problems for brands that we're going to dig into today. The first is visibility. So how do you make sure that AI models actually recommend your brand? And the second is attribution, so understanding how do you actually measure AI traffic properly. We will have a live Q&A at the end of the session. So if you have any questions, please drop them in the chat at the bottom of the screen as we go. But for now, let's get into it, and over to you, Wojtek.
Thanks for the brief introduction. And I'm Wojtek Orovec. I'm founder at Ranketta, which is a company, a platform that helps companies become more visible and sell their products in AI search. And I would like to kick things off with this statistic from McKinsey, which says there's 50% of buyers who use AI search. So most of us can agree upon that the way people search is changing. Before, there was a user who directly interacted with the internet. They searched something on Google, they got few results back, they went to the website, purchased a product, service, and that was it. But now there's a middleman that stands between the user and the internet. And this middleman can search on behalf of the user, and it can also make decisions. So you only get a created response back. So if I type a query like which carrier has the best mobile data plan to ChatGPT, what happens under the hood is that ChatGPT will split my query into subqueries, aka query fanouts, and use each of them to search on Google to gather resources, gather the information, and only then I get my response back. And here's the magic. When ChatGPT puts this query into Google or different search engine, it's not like all of us. It doesn't pick the first result. It picks the most relevant result. And that's basically the biggest change. It picks based on meta title, meta description, and URL. It picks based on relevance. So now it's not only about position, but also how relevant you are for the user's query. And it's one of the reasons why there's only 11% overlap between ChatGPT and Google search results. We did a study that showed that the ChatGPT response is completely different from what you would get from Google search results. And what we are seeing at the moment is that the organic traffic is declining long term, and the so-called zero-click phenomenon is happening. It basically means that when I get a response back, I don't really have to click or go to some websites to get the information. I already got it in the response I got from the AI model. So people don't really click and traffic is declining. Customers are also increasingly turning to AI when making purchasing decision, especially at the bottom of the funnel when they want to compare the best options. And as all of us know, the pay-per-click campaigns are constantly getting more expensive. So I'm a company, I'm a brand. What should I do? And I brought one of our customers, Daytrip. They provide private car transfers. And so let's say you're in Italy and you want to get from Rome to Florence. That's when you look for something like Daytrip. That's their business. And it's one of their they are one of our customers. And I want to show you how you can implement and how you should approach AI search and what results you will get back. And the first step we took, or Daytrip took, was that we started measuring. And when you want to control a new acquisition channel, you have to measure it. So we found questions potential customers ask about their brand, and we gather up data from Google Search Console, from the customer support, the keywords they target. We combine them and created prompts and questions people ask about their brand. And these are questions you want to target. And then we took all these questions and started shooting them to all the AI models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, and analyzed all the answers. We check for mentions. This is how a mention looks like. You can see that now there's even the external link, so the user can go directly to your website. And besides the mentions, we also measured how recommended or how positively or negatively perceived the brand is. As you can see in this answer, the Daytrip is mentioned as the overall best option for private car transfers. So that's what we look for. And we measure this over time. So the customer can see how many answers contain their mention, how their sentiment changes over time. And this is extremely important. Before, it was mainly about position, but now there's more metrics we can have, like the visibility and the completely new one, which is called sentiment score. The second step we took was that we started with link building. And this isn't something new. This is a concept that's been there for few years. And most of you notice that in each answer, there's the small bubble. This is called citation. And this bubble is the reason why ChatGPT, in this case, mentioned Daytrip at the first place. And the citations directly influence what AI says about your brand and whether it mentions you or your competitors. And your goal as a brand is to get mentioned in as many of these sources as possible. That's you get mentioned in AI search. So what we did was that we statistically measured what are the most influential sources that influence the AI models the most. And then we started with link building. We outreached all the authors and said, hey, I would like to include Daytrip in your comparison of the top 10 private car transfers. And in exchange for a backlink or a few bucks. And your goal is basically to cover up as many of these sources with your mentions. That's how you get mentioned in AI search. And I will help you with this a little bit because we did a research based on 16 million citations. And the strongest citation overall for ChatGPT is Reddit. All of you know this, but I want to stop at the second place, Wikipedia. Because if any of you companies already have a Wikipedia or can have one, I would totally do it. This is the number one source I see in all the industries. And when Reddit is not for you, when YouTube is not for you, Wikipedia is, I think, for most of the companies. And Wikipedia is a strong citation, but it's also uh, a source that's always used to train new models. So when OpenAI or Anthropic releases a new model, it already includes data from Wikipedia in the trained data set. So that's something you can do. The third place is YouTube. You don't have to write long articles, put them to your website or some third-party websites. You can also make a video or buy an influencer. This can be also a really strong source you can build. And which type of pages does AI cite the most? At the moment, almost 2/3 of citations come from company websites, but 1/3 come from third-party websites, social media, and this is extremely important to keep this in mind. And we assume that this will grow, and this is what creates the narrative about your brand. It's not only your website, but it's the third-party publication that creates the perception about your brand. And number three, obviously, content. And I don't want to tell you how to write content, how to structure it. Mm, this is not my discipline. But I want to talk about the query fanouts, the subqueries AI models use under the hood to search on Google, Bing, and this is something we scraped for Daytrip, and we found the most used keywords under the hood, AI searches for, and we then targeted them with content. So we gather up the top queries, AI searches for under the hood. We took the top citations. So we already know what content AI likes and what keywords it searches for. So we can then create really well-performing content for the customer. And that's what we did at Daytrip as well. But one thing all of you can do is that you can spoil your content in meta description. We recommend you should put as much data and content into the meta description. Because as you've seen at the start, the meta description is the reason why AI models pick your content over the other. So I would add as much as data, as much information in the meta description. So what was the outcome for Daytrip? What I can tell you is that we increased their visibility by 50%. This means there's now plus 50% answers that include mention about Daytrip. And we also increased their share of voice by 100%. So we doubled it. And the share of voice basically takes into account how also their competition is mentioned. So in other words, now there's more answers that include Daytrip, and also there's more answers that include Daytrip only and none of their competition. And how it looks in perspective, this is a really good chart. On the left, there's the sentiment score, and on the bottom, there's visibility. And as you can see, Daytrip basically outperform all their competitors on the market, and they become a leader in AI search. And I can tell you that AI search is one of their most successful and most or strongest acquisition channel they have. And I would like to have more success stories like this one. So that's why we decided to make an analysis for all of you who attend this webinar. So we can find questions people ask about your brand, how visible you are, and how is your sentiment compared to all the competitors. What are the most influential sources AI uses in your industry? And also, we can give you a few recommendations of what you can do right now to improve it. All you have to do is to type audit into the chat, and we will send you the analysis over. I will give you a few seconds to do so. And my last takeaway here is to remember how SEO started. I wasn't alive at the time, but I noticed from all kinds of stories. And according to the stories, it was really easy to rank up. It was really easy to become the first result in Google search. And I feel like the same opportunity is in front of you all. So let's make the most of it. And some of you attendees might have noticed that I excluded one important part, and that's attribution. And this is something that Milan will tell you more about. So Milan, floor is yours.
Thanks, Vojta. Yeah, Vojta was talking very nicely about that initial part of the user journey. When your customers are researching your brand, they're thinking along with AI. What I want to talk about is an analysis we have done on our Roivenue data, because Roivenue is tracking websites of many clients across many countries, and we took a look at 350 of them across countries in Europe, UK, and US. And what we wanted to analyze is how a traffic from LLMs behaves. Is it the same as organic? Is it the same as paid? Is it completely different? And that's what I would like to talk about and what I would like to show you. First of all, the traffic from LLMs is growing pretty rapidly. We started watching the data in January 2025, and at that point, only 0.12% of organic visits were from LLMs, and it peaked around 1% last year, right before Christmas. So you can see it's growing very, very quickly, but at the same time, it's very, very small. But it is likely to continue to grow in the upcoming years. Yeah, so at the moment, the takeaway is that the traffic on your website from LLMs is likely quite small. So if that's the number you are seeing at the moment, you are not alone. You are actually in the majority. Don't forget those searches that never visit your site from LLMs. But how it behaves when they actually land on your website, what we took a look at is how much credit the visits are given, and we found out that actually last touch attribution does not evaluate fairly the traffic from LLMs, mainly because that would sit somewhere at the beginning or in the middle of the user journey. So by using last touch only, you would be losing quite a lot of value percentage-wise. And what we were very interested in was the conversions, how it converts. Because at the very beginning, the traffic from LLMs was converting less than organic on average. But since last year, in somewhere around end of May, it converts better. And it can be quite significant on some clients. Not all of them. I will have few slides about it as well. But for around 2/3 of all companies, AI traffic converts better than their average organic traffic, which is quite interesting. For 16%, it's more or less the same. There's no significant difference. And for some, the organic traffic converts better. We have some ideas why that actually is, why it happens. So we can take a look at those. But the takeaways 2 and 3 you should have is that last touch is not properly assigning fair credit to LLMs, and that the LLM traffic on average converts better. And well, let's go now into the differences across clients. We took a look at how much revenue they actually generate from this traffic. And if you are from a brand that currently sees a very little revenue coming or assigned to traffic from ChatGPT or Gemini or Claude, then you are in the majority. But at the same time, we already have a few clients where the revenue is over 5%, which is quite significant. And those are also the clients where we know they specifically started optimizing for AI visibility. Or, which is important, they were very strong in SEO previously because there is still a relationship that being good in SEO could help your AI visibility. Few numbers from the data set and what we think might be the reason behind them. We do have a pet food brand among our clients, and the conversion rate from LLMs was actually 17 times better than organic. And our interpretation is that the customer journey probably is that they go to ChatGPT, they ask, well, what is a good quality pet food? They do the research, they compare different brands, they ask follow-up questions, and when they decide this brand is the right choice for them, they are almost ready to buy. While organic traffic from Google or Bing is much more earlier in the customer journey, actually comparing and doing all of that manually. So that we think is the reason. The opposite side would be the leisure brands, because across multiple of them, we have seen that they do not convert very well. It was around 8 times worse than organic. And the interpretation we have is that it's being shown to people at a different stage of their research. Because if you are you run an arcade and someone visits you through organic, they probably search for something like arcade in my city, and they are just choosing the best place. But when they are in ChatGPT, they might be solving issues like, well, it's rainy on Friday, what should I do? And it gives them plenty of ideas like, oh, you can go bowling, you can go running, you can go to the gym, you can go to movies, you can go to arcade. So you visit those sites, but you are actually in the consideration phase, not ready to commit to the arcade. So that's our interpretation, what might be the reason. And the third interesting thing is that the highest LLM share in our data set was 10% of organic traffic. So quite significant, definitely more than Bing, and still obviously way behind Google. So I think it depends a lot on your area. What is your target audience? Is it something people look for using ChatGPT, and so on? And let me give you an example, which is not directly from our data set. It's actually taken from LinkedIn, from a Slovakian brand, GymBeam. They are an e-commerce store heavily focusing on nutrition, healthy lifestyle, fitness. And their CEO actually mentioned that they have lost a huge amount of traffic on their blog, where they have plenty of different content, and only a small amount of people started to visit their website from LLMs. So if you would look only on the left side, it would look like a huge loss because you're losing a lot of traffic, and a lot of traffic that is coming to your website for free. But he also shared that only 600 orders were actually generated from the blog visits, and way more orders have been generated from the AI visits. So you can think about it that you are actually losing your visitors, but you are fueling AI to be visible, and those people can still read about your brand. They can still get to know your brand, and you can actually generate more orders as a result. And then there is our prediction. We will be updating that on our website also, so you can follow our blog for more updates about how is this share of AI visits changing across the data set. And we believe it could get somewhere around 1.2, 1.5% by the end of the year. In an optimistic scenario, it might be close to 2%, probably. And that would be almost everything from my side. So what you should take from this presentation? So is there a new channel? The answer would definitely be yes. But at the same time, it is quite small. So it's not something that is going to change your business overnight. And it's not something where a huge growth will come in next month. But at the same time, it's a great opportunity because the competition is low. So you can become visible in AI pretty quickly, and you can gain advantage in the future because you will be ahead of your competitors. And that's pretty much it. And I think there would be time for the QA.
Cool, thanks Milan, thanks Vojta, that was great. So yeah, we'll now move to the Q&A section. I can see we've got a few questions already, but if you have any other burning questions, please put them in the Q&A section at the bottom, or I can see maybe we've got one in the chat as well, which is also fine. So I guess to start off with, maybe one for you, Vojta, is there are obviously various different LLMs. Is there a meaningful difference between how these different tools are deciding what to recommend? And you're on mute, Vojta.
Yeah. I think there's a major difference between how the AI models work, which sources they like more and which sources they cite. And it's really important to keep this in mind. So ChatGPT will use different sources compared to Claude or Gemini. All the AI models use a lot of different sources. And what we usually do is that we make an average among all the AI models. So you know what are the strongest sources in all the AI models, not only in one. It would be extremely difficult to focus on a single AI model because that's a drop in the ocean. So there's definitely a major difference of how the AI models or which sources they use.
Great. Milan, one for you, I think, which is an interesting question. So how would you say paid media is influencing AI search?
I think that Vojta might be actually a better person to answer that, because I think that the question means if the AI answer in Google is influenced by the paid media. I'm not certain, but that's how I interpret it. And then I think Vojta is the better one to answer that question.
Yeah, at the moment, the AI doesn't really there's no difference for AI between paid articles, paid news posts, and all this stuff. It doesn't really see a difference. There's no difference for AI. So you can actually use the pay media as a really easy citation you can get in really strong website. And the influencer on YouTube might be a really, really good example. We have many brands who used this strategy to improve their visibility, and it works really well. It works now. I think long term, the AI models will get smarter, and we actually see the difference between a paid media and a standard objective article. But at the moment, you can use this as an advantage.
Okay, very interesting. Milan, this one's definitely for you. So we're already using GA4. Do we still have a blind spot when it comes to AI traffic?
Yeah, that one's for me. I think the short answer is yes, and I think it's in like two specific and two different blind spots. One is when someone from LLMs is actually visiting your website, then you are missing in GA that proper attribution, how much they generated. You can obviously recognize traffic from LLMs in GA, but you cannot fairly assess how much revenue they are generating for you. So that would be the blind spot number one, the blind spot where Roivenue can help. And the second one would be all those people that search for your brand or for something related to your brand in LLMs, but they never click and they never visit your website. And those would be the ones you can uncover with Ranketta, because you can measure at least the visibility in AI tools. Obviously, at the moment, you cannot track how many people searched for you in LLMs.
And Wojtek, anything to add to that?
Yeah, at the moment, there's no reliable source to know what people search in animals, but you can use your Google Search Console. And what is really strong is that you can also ask during onboarding or during checkout. And I've seen many tools that already ask, how did you find us? That's the first question. And then a follow-up, what prompt did you use in, let's say, ChatGPT? And that's how you know what people actually search for. And that's one of the pillars that you can use to find what people ask about your brand. But Google, neither OpenAI, neither Anthropic, neither Perplexity, none of them published what people search in the LLMs.
Yeah. So Milan, do you think that kind of self-reported data could be used in attribution models?
Yes, that's something we could support in Roivenue. So if someone is already asking this question, like, yeah, where did you find us? And they answer LLMs or they answer anything else, it can be added to the user journey. And it's actually up to the client to decide what it means. If this information has a higher weight than anything we measure in the journey, or if it's just added as an additional touch point.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah, I think we've got a follow-up question. So on how Roivenue measures AI traffic. So based on what data does Roivenue measure AI traffic, and is it more accurate than GA4? So I guess it's more about how we actually then use that data within Roivenue.
Yeah, I would say in recognizing the AI traffic, no, Roivenue is not any better than GA or a different web tracking tool. It would still use the UTMs. That would be something like ChatGPT/referral. Roivenue would be then better in reconstructing the entire journey. So recognizing that this person that visited from ChatGPT also did a click on Facebook later on or before that, and then searched through Google in the end and made a conversion. That's where revenue would be better. But in recognizing the AI traffic itself, there would be no meaningful difference.
What you can actually do to go beyond Google Analytics is that you can use tool like Cloudflare or Akamai, some CDN like this, and it will give you a small dashboard about which, but these are crawlers. But based on the crawlers volume, you can at least approximate how many people search for your brand or how many AI engines that there are in the background. So you can use a tool like Cloudflare, which will tell you how many crawlers from OpenAI or from Gemini, from Perplexity went to your website. And this is how you go beyond Google Analytics. But besides that, there's not many other more accurate options at the moment.
Clear, thank you. Wojciech, another one for you, I think. So switching track slightly. So for a brand that's basically invisible in AI answers right now, where would be the best place to start?
I think the first step I think we can take is that you ask the AI models, okay, or you ask a question your potential customer would ask and see the answer yourself. And you will see what recommended, which source it is used, and you can at least see what's actually going on. That's the first step. That's something all of you can do. And then it depends on the industry of and depends on your current state, depends on your website, whether you have a blog. What I would definitely do to improve my visibility when I wasn't visible is that I will start publishing content on my website. I would check that it's visible, that AI can actually find stuff on my website, that it can find pricing. And then I will start with the link building. I will start to get mentions in the sources AI uses most often. And that's the first few steps you have to take before you start to get mentioned in AI answers.
Okay, makes sense. This is a good one. So right now, I feel like most of the LLMs don't use UTMs when linking to websites. Do you think that will change in the future? I guess that is open to either of you, whoever's got something to say.
I think that they will definitely start using UTMs once they will roll out their advertisement model, because they will definitely want to be visible in whatever tool that brand is using for evaluation. So my guess is that once you will be able to buy ads in ChatGPT or Gemini or anywhere, the UTMs will work. That's my feeling. But Vojta, I am interested to hear your take as well.
Mm, I mean, my idea is that they will start to add it more with the paid ads module. They are starting to add to all the AI models. And also there's a little bit of pressure from marketers over to them when it comes to the attribution, because right now it's extremely difficult to attribute any traffic coming from the LLMs. And I think this will change really soon, and there's going to be more accurate attribution way of attributing the traffic coming from the LLM.
Yeah. Okay. And then I guess slightly related, maybe one for you, Milan. how do we know if there's AI traffic already in our data but being misattributed to another channel?
Well, if it's already in your data, that's easy. I would say you can just search for those sources, because if someone visits from ChatGPT, it will be source ChatGPT and Medium referral, very likely. It can get lost, but if everything works well on your website, it should have this source and Medium. So you can see if you see the traffic present. But if it's being misattributed, is more difficult, and it's more like a general question. How do we know any of our sources is misattributed? And probably one of the easy ones is like if you have any tool where multiple attribution models is available, and if they differ significantly, that can mean you don't really know if it should be very high, if it should be very low. But also you might have a problem that you are not able to reconstruct the journeys, because attribution is quite data quality dependent. So it's a tricky question to find out if you really misattribute something. It's not an easy task. There is no easy solve for it.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've got probably time for one more question. So I think this one's for both of you. Maybe we've covered some of this already, but just to summarize, if you could only do one thing this week to start measuring AI traffic better, what would it be? I don't know, Wojtek, do you want to go first?
Yeah. The first thing I would do is that I would ask all the AI models and see what's actually going on there. And then I would start measuring the visibility, how I look, how my brand is visible, and also the sources. That would be my first step. And it's always the first step. First, you have to understand what's going on, and then you can make another action to improve it.
Yeah, and for me, I think that what I liked a lot, it was some recommendation somewhere. I really like that you can just check when you see which sources are citing your competitors. Often those are sources where you can appear just by texting them. If they prepare some list like top 10 e-commerce websites for purpose XYZ, often you can just ask and they are happy to add you. So you can get to those right places very quickly.
That sounds like a good quick win. Great. Well, thank you so much. So if you asked a question that we didn't get to, or if you have further questions, then please just let us know afterwards. We will share the slides and the recording in the coming days. If you would like to check out either of the companies, Roivenue or Ranketta, in more detail, then you can use Google search or your AI tool of choice, or the QR codes on the screen, or you can reach out to us directly in the kind of old-fashioned way. And finally, as a special thank you for joining the webinar, we are happy to offer an exclusive discount to both of these solutions. So this is new clients, but we are able to offer 50% off Roivenue or Ranketta or both for the first 3 months of any new engagement. And that offer is valid until the end of the month. So if that is potentially of interest, please do reach out and let us know as soon as possible. There'll be more details in the email follow-up. So with that, I'd like to thank our speakers for sharing their insights today. Thank you all for your time, for joining us, and have a great rest of the day. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thanks for the invitation.